All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA SIPC. All of my trades are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. Position disclosure is more or less the same. I actually got all out of Palantir this afternoon, but then I got back in when the bull flag into the close broke lower. I got triggered back in on some, so I still have that, a little bit of that. But tight leash from here. Tight leash on a few things. Tight leash on that NVIDIA too. Gets back towards yesterday's high. Yeah, that one pretty quickly. All right, so market's getting a little crazy. Well, really not the market, but some of the stocks. You guys can hear me, right? No one said hello. Usually somebody says hello. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, guys. All right, so the SPYs here closed up 0.3%. The Qs closed up 0.1%. The IWM closed up a percentage point. So we saw that situation again. We keep seeing this flip-flop between the Russell and the Qs on relative strength and relative weakness. Yesterday, the IWM got absolutely clobbered, and the Qs held up great. Today, the IWM had almost a full percentage point bounce, and the Qs were weaker and not really participating. TLT just really important all over the place and closed well off lows today, so that's pretty important. If we had another very weak close in the TLT, like closing at lows and approaching that 84, that would begin to look like a problem. But we closed well off lows. The dollar finished down, so that helps stock market. Dollar is down pretty big on the year, so that helps to bring things like the stocks and crypto and commodities to trade at higher prices because they're dollar-denominated assets. Gold closed up 0.5%, oil's flat, and Bitcoin is up 2.5% after a pretty weak day yesterday. The Bitcoin stuff's been all over the place, just with them either passing or not passing this bill. It's like yesterday they weren't passing it, today they were passing it, then into the close it looked like they weren't passing it again. I really don't know, but the stocks underlying certainly look like it's getting passed. You Circle up 20% on the day, over 20%. This was the call out of the day, by the way, was this Circle. If you look at this daily chart here on Circle, knowing that news was going to happen with the inside day yesterday, Circle didn't really trade down very much yesterday when it looked like things were not going to get passed, and then was able to go up huge when it looked like they were going to get passed, which that just seems to be how this market is now, right? Whenever it looks like bad news is going to happen, you go down a little bit. Whenever that bad news doesn't happen, then you go up a lot. So yeah, we called out in the morning meeting for Circle long through 205. So that was a pretty good trade. But it just seems like some of these stocks now are starting to really feel a little bit like that late 2020, early 2021 period. Even though it's a different environment, interest rates are much higher right now. The animal spirits have really come alive. There's some names out there that are just getting completely nutty. Short squeezes all over the place. Things just moving huge and unrealistically in some regards on stocks that don't even have revenue. Companies that are pre-revenue companies still at this point are giving these huge moves. And we actually started to note that like a few weeks ago. But I remember saying that tends to be a sign for late cycle. But what does late cycle mean? Some in the past we've seen crazy names at the end of the cycle run for 3 days. Sometimes it's 3 weeks. Sometimes it could even be 3 months. So those names are, broadly speaking, just continuing to run and run. What is Workhorse going? No, Workhorse pulled back. I was just curious about that one because that was one of the first ones that kind of came to my mind. But if you look at this, Joby just getting crazy. Company doesn't even have revenue yet. Up 17% today on no new news. Yesterday it had news. Yesterday it was up like 8-9%. Today it's up another 17% on no news. Really accelerating here. Got to keep this on the radar for signals to short. We had a great intraday signal to short, but it eventually failed off this shooting star. in combination with some bearish option flow, in combination with a seller on the tape at 16.15. So that trade worked pretty well, and then it continued. QS was another one with this shooting star here at 10:30 that led to a pretty good day trade on day. I don't even feel like counting that many days to the upside. Just get a little bit crazy. So you want to look for the signals, right, and take those trades. There's a phenomenal reward profile on this trade, right? If you took this shooting star here, I don't know, let's say you shorted 1140, 1150 versus this high of 1157, you're taking on, I don't know, 7 to 17 cents worth of risk. Just on the intraday, you got $1 worth of reward, and then the trade more or less failed. It didn't technically break that high, but it got close enough to it. But if you look at the daily chart, there's even so much more reward beyond that. This stock can easily pull back to 850, and probably will at some point. So I love the idea on these names that are getting really, really crazy to have them on the radar for smaller time frame short setups that hopefully can take advantage of a bigger time frame technical pullback for when and if it actually were to happen. So let's keep looking for those stocks. I was kind of asking into the close if anybody has any other names that are doing this. And there's a lot of stocks that are kind of like a Unity was up huge today, but I count this Unity as a day one. So it's not really one that I want to be looking for. I want them to be at least into day 2 or day 3 to consider to look for the short, which does not even mean to just blindly take it. Like, I liked the idea of maybe looking at this S-bet short, but then I saw that the overnight borrow rate in this was obscene, so it kind of takes away that trade. But other names that are similar to this could be on the radar. Not MP. MP gave a rest day today, but if we can find anything else that's similar to a QS or a Joby, we should be having those on our radar for those types of potential setups, just because they're getting a little bit silly, but it is just, it shows you the animal spirits in this market right now are getting insane. Turning over to the index level, which is usually where I start. So we closed positive today, kind of much ado about nothing on Jerome Powell. We saw a statement from the White House that a letter was drafted to fire Jerome Powell, but then we saw Donald Trump himself on television say that he's not considering getting rid of Jerome Powell. So the market was all over the place on that. We did begin to trade down decently hard at a certain point, and then somewhere in this bounce back, he was like, "Nah, I'm not actually doing it." So some people might call that a taco trade, whatever. But the point is that the down move here lasted for like 40 minutes, and then the big bounce back happened as he said he wasn't doing it, which I certainly hope he doesn't. I really hope he doesn't. Just I don't think it's a good move. But now, turning over to the market technicals here, we had our failed breakout yesterday, and the question is that failed breakout going to lead to anything more or not? This market could pull back to 610 to 615 and still be very, very healthy. I think if the market only really begins to become bearish below like 603, which we're very, very far away from. So, do we get a little bit of a deeper correction? Was the low today our deeper correction? And now that we have this tail, we have kind of competing things, because you could make a very strong argument that today's low is the pivot low in the uptrend that will lead to further upside continuation. You could also make the argument that yesterday's a failed breakout and could lead to lower prices. So in a very small time frame, it's like you have a pivot high yesterday and a pivot low today. Which one breaks? That's really going to be the key. Do we get above the high of yesterday? If so, it is full on bull market. Do we get below the low of yesterday? If so, the low of today. If so, that indicates that this market needs more time, more corrective action. We are at that midpoint of July now, going into like options X. I've mentioned it a couple times. At the beginning of the month, I read a Goldman Sachs note that said that July 17th, that they're tactically bullish until July 17th. A couple of things I would say about that. One is I haven't seen a major update on that since then. Two is the fact that they're no longer tactically bullish does not mean that they're bearish. But tactically bullish until July 17th, that's tomorrow. And then again, OPEX is on Friday. Yet at the same time, we saw, and I was glad to see it, we saw a note from Rubner at Citadel now, no longer at Goldman Sachs, that was pretty bullish, if you read through that note. And I hope everybody did, because this stuff it tends to be some of the best stuff that's out there. And he's basically bullish until mid-August, if not early September. And I understand why. We talked about this yesterday, that unless you break lower, there's going to be a continued systematic bid in this market for another month. What I was saying yesterday, I think applies. This market right now, from a market dynamics perspective, is not where it was in February. It is much more neutral now. There is more room for a whole month of buying if the market holds up. The market goes sideways, if it continues to grind higher, then you're just going to continue to feed on itself. It'll just continue to feed on itself with the systematic buying, the hedge fund buying, and everything else. You need something to break it lower, and if it can break lower, then you have rebuilt enough exposure that you could get a sell-off off of it. But that positioning is so neutral that if the status quo remains the status quo, it is bullish, right? It's just that we're at a time now where you have an increasing risk to the downside if you were able to get a catalyst. And I'd be lying if I didn't think for a brief moment today that the Trump-Jerome Powell firing news could act as that catalyst. But then again, within 20 minutes after the White House saying that they drafted a letter to fire the guy, Donald Trump said that they were not going to. So we'll see what happens on that. So if we could ever get a catalyst to actually break us lower, it could feed on itself. But otherwise, this market is structurally supportive to continue to hold in and to continue to garner higher prices. So trade accordingly and manage your risk accordingly. From a technical perspective, though, I'm going to be neutral or less bullish until and unless we get back above yesterday's high. If we get back above yesterday's high, then I will be, once again throwing in the towel on any, short setup that might have been coming in from a lack of continuation last week, plus a push through failure yesterday. So it's kind of where we're at on the big picture. On the small picture, I already mentioned Circle. Circle was the trade of the day, having some focus more on like these Jobies and QSs of the world, just off of their insane upside extension and the way that they're running them. RGTI was also a great trade. We had the news in the VTF pre-market when the stock was still trading at $13.50. So that was a solid breakout for continuation on good news on that one as well. And a J&J I thought was the best earnings trade that was out there. We called for this one for a long, so that worked out decently. So I think actually there were some really good trades called out from the team here between those cute shorts in Joby and QS and some of those longs and some of these other in-play names. That's all I really got. I tried to buy this Deal XY today, which was a recent IPO, to see if they would squeeze it. It went above 5, but then I stopped myself out below 5. I lost a little bit of money in it, so that was a failed trade that I had there. At one point, I went to short that S-bet, saw what the overnight borrow was, and got out of the way. So that was like a break-even-ish trade. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, excuse me. So that's all I got, which is not really too much for today, honestly. The big event was seeing some downside volatility in those headlines that was then fully reversed. So we closed strong. That's all I got. Happy to answer any questions. From you, Vixie Bull, I know you have a longer-term thesis on cores per your comments in a couple meetings ago, but if it breaks up from this ADMA on the daily, what's your shorter-term target? A shorter-term target in cores is basically like 16 to 17, like that gap fill zone. So like the gap starts at 16 and ends at 17. It's kind of in that zone. So that's my full-on target really for the stock. So shorter term and bigger term really. Not a name I'm expecting to be in for a very long time, but if it continues to stay stuck in a range between 12 and 15, 16, I'm probably not going anywhere with it. A Coca-Cola is going to bring in real sugar. Brush your teeth. But those Mexican Cokes with the real sugar are the best. Get Tom M like 16 to 18. Yep, so we're thinking the same thing.
Do we have any beers in the fridge? Oh, sorry.
I don't know if we have any beers, but I don't want any. I'm good. What else, guys? Anybody have anything? Anybody have anything at all? You guys are pretty quiet out there today. Not seeing much in the YouTube. What's up, Scott? What's up, Cyril? Not seeing much in the VTF. I don't mind doing a quicker one, but I'm also not really in a rush. Someone had a question above. I missed it. Alex, I don't understand, why did they sell Google on Good News? I won't be able to watch the sum up now. I'll watch it tomorrow. Oh, okay. If I can answer the question. What was the news? I missed it. I feel like I heard Josh talking. I was away from the desk for like a solid hour and a half today on some meetings, so I think I missed that one. But if anybody can remind me what it was or copy it into the VTF so I can see, I'd be happy to try to give Alex a question. Oh, Chat GPT using Google Cloud. Yeah, I did see that, and I wish I had a better answer for you, Alex. I really don't know what to make of that one. I remember seeing the headline and seeing that there was no reaction, and honestly kind of just moving on with my life. I assume that the market didn't view it as important because there was no reaction. Sometimes it's the wrong way to think, by the way. Sometimes we get news in the VTF so early that there hasn't been a reaction yet, but if the news looks important, you can trade it and make money off of it. But generally speaking, if there's no real reaction, that means that the market just views it as already priced in, already known, or not significant for some reason or another. So I agree with you. It does sound like it'd be good news, but did not move the market at all, and I don't have anything else for you on that. Popping over to the YouTube, seeing a couple questions come in. What do I think for year end? Year end is too far away for me to have thoughts, to be honest with you. You know, I'm not like on CNBC where I got to give like a year end target for a whole bunch of reasons. We're halfway through the year, a little bit more than halfway through the year, and a lot of things can happen over the course of 5.5 months. You know, generally thinking, I'm expecting weakness to come in somewhere between now through the beginning of October, and then I'm expecting, and this is really just the pattern of seasonality, the end of the year to be strong. October through the end of the year to be strong. That's what I'm generally expecting. But there's so many moving parts right now with tariffs and everything. It seems to change minute by minute. This market, if we ever were to see a deterioration of economic conditions, could change very, very, very quickly. But we have not seen that, right? Maybe a small uptick on the CPI yesterday from tariffs, but there's been otherwise no real deterioration of economic conditions at all. Employment stays strong. So, you know, that's the employment numbers are the big thing I'm looking for to potentially give us a shock at some point. Might not happen. So otherwise, I would just kind of expect some general weakness. What are you drinking?
Shiner Black Lager.
Oh, it's a dark beer.
Yes.
You just don't drink dark beer.
I'll power through it.
It'll be a little bit better if you put it in a glass, I think. I always find that really dark beers are better in
I don't know that I trust the glass.
in a glass. Rich says let it breathe. Yeah, you probably gotta let it breathe a little bit too. But don't let it breathe so much that it gets warm.
Tequila?
No, I'm not really a tequila drinker. I'll drink a margarita once in a while, but that's it. If I'm gonna drink liquor, it's gonna be whiskey, bourbon, rye, traditionally. Once in a while, a scotch, but kind of prefer bourbon on the rocks.
I have a love-hate relationship with bourbon. I love how it tastes, but it kind of hates me.
It's because you're
From Chris K. Last week you made a comment about these prop firms that are popping up, like the funded account demo things. I've always been curious, but what have you heard about them? Some allow you to trade stocks, just not just futures. I don't even know if they're actually sending marketable orders. I don't know if they would pull a last minute change to these arbitrary rules when it's time for them to pay you out. Your professional insight would be nice. Sure. So my thought process on, I call them challenger companies. You know, they refer to themselves as proprietary trading companies, but they're not proprietary trading companies in the way that I've always seen what a proprietary trading company is. I call them challenger companies because basically you're paying money to be on a demo account, the simulator account, in order to try to pass a challenge, right? And the challenge is not just make money; it's make money across a whole series of rules. And I don't like them because I think one of my all-time favorite lines in finance in general is from Charlie Munger, and I probably can't quote it word for word off the top of my head, but basically the quote is like, figure out what someone's incentive is and figure out like what they're most likely going to do next. And that's been a big part of my trading philosophy when it comes to understanding what hedge funds do and what analysts do, but I think it can be applied more broadly than that. So when you think about these challenger companies, what do they want? What's the incentive there? What they want is for people to fail. That's what they want. They are incentivized for you to fail, so you keep coming back over and over and over again and paying the monthly costs on repeat to take their challenge in hopes of getting a fully funded account from them, supposedly. But the incentive is for you to fail. That's the goal, really. So they're designed for that. They're not regulated properly. So they're not regulated by FINRA. They're not regulated by the SEC because there's no live accounts, right? You're just paying to be on a simulator account. So I don't like that either. There have already been a couple instances of those companies where they were like offshores based, and then they just disappear with everybody's money. So definitely don't like that. And then the final thing is most of them can't even actually provide you with a funded account because they're not actually like broker dealers or banks or anything like that. So, and I'm not going to name any names, but what some of them end up having to do is they actually have to partner with a real company just in case someone is able to actually pass their test and gets a live account. They have to be able to give that live account. So there are a couple of those challenger companies that have actually partnered with T3, where in the event that someone were able to pass their test, which they certainly hope will never happen, then they're actually going to just give the money to T3 for that person to be able to have a live account. And from our perspective, it's like, okay, fine, like you guys are going to cover it, like what do we care? And if the person was good enough to actually pass that challenge, maybe they actually are a good trader because those challenges are so difficult. Again, they're literally designed to make the trader fail. So that's my thought process about it, as opposed to like a more traditional proprietary trading company that gets compensated through a percentage of the profits of the trader, like T3. The incentive at T3 is to make our traders as successful as possible because we're going to keep a percentage of your P&L. So that's it, and that's why like for traders at T3, the morning meeting and the afternoon meeting and the training program, the virtual trading floor, and all that stuff, it's free. So it's free because we just want you to be as successful of a trader as possible, and being honest, that's not pure altruism. It's because we're going to make the most amount of money if you guys are able to be as successful as possible. So that's my thoughts on it. I hope it helps. From Cyril, can we say that the IWM is in the penalty box? Yeah, we can, unless it gets above yesterday's high. So the IWM, so the SPYs and Qs yesterday had breakout failures. The IWM was a more legitimate day to take notice of, bearish engulfing candle. So the Russell here is definitely in the penalty box unless you can get above yesterday's high. I like that. No problem, Scott. Try Reposado Tequila. I used to only drink bourbon scotch, but Reposado is really good stuff. Yeah,
Blanco
I'm
guy.
I'm not a good drunk on tequila. That's why I don't drink it. That's why one or two margaritas is okay. I tend to be. I try not to really ever get like
You're
drunk,
a great drunk all around.
but
What are you
I
talking about?
tend to be like if you get me pretty drunk, like a pretty happy go lucky kind of drunk. Unless I'm drinking tequila, unless I've been doing tequila shots. If I've been doing tequila shots, you probably want to stay away from me, and I'm not going to remember the next day. Tequila makes me not remember also, compared to other alcohols. I typically remember things, but doing a lot of tequila, I don't remember the next day, and I may or may not have threatened terrible things upon people. After too many shots
But you
of
don't remember
tequila.
the next day. So
May or may not. May or may not. From Apex Joy, do you think TLT can hold above 83.50 for a while? What's recent Japanese bond movements affecting the TLT? Yeah, I mean, we got to pay attention to global interest rates and the global movement of bonds. It's an interesting environment right now for sure. I am not a bond expert. You know, my knowledge on fixed income is nowhere near my knowledge on the equity side of things. So I just want to be honest about that, right? I am always learning myself as well. But I can tell you when it comes to bonds, generally speaking, when it comes to this TLT, generally speaking, there's two things that matter. The absolute interest rate matters, and if we really start to get below like 84 in the TLT, I think that could become a problem. But it's not just the absolute rate, it's the speed in which it changes is a lot of times even more important than what the absolute rate is. And that can happen in both directions. Very, very fast moves in short periods of time in the TLT have destabilizing effects on everything else. They have destabilizing effects on the equity market. So I think, you know, getting below 84 and holding below 84 in the TLT could start to generate some problems for the equity market. But for me, it's more about the speed of change, which is why the fact that we tailed back up and closed okay in TLT takes away some of my fears that this speed lower that was starting to happen, right? Big down day on the 14th. Yesterday was a little bit weaker. 2 days ago was a little bit weaker as well. And then yesterday was a big down day. If we had another big down day today, if we closed at lows, it might start to look like a problem. But, you know, when Trump changed his mind on Powell today and we got well off those lows and closed okay in TLT, I'm less concerned now about the rate of descent. So, from Daddy Trades, my last tequila night was in college. My fraternity brothers and I ended up fighting another fraternity and getting banned from the school. Thank you, Cinco de Mayo. Never again. Wow. Epic. That's an epic one. Epic, epic. It's wimpy that they kicked you out of the school for that, though. It's like we're not even allowed to fight people anymore. Why not? You know, as long as everybody's following the rules. A gentleman's match. No knives, guns, whips, chains, or swords. That's another story though. So we'll save that one for a happy hour. Oh man. Or flying sidekicks.
No whips or chains.
No swords. I may or may not have been in high school and was about to show up to a rumble, and then the police showed up and the other guys had swords. Oh man.
that was
Yeah.
school.
Yes. Yes. Whatever happened to the good old gentlemanly duel? I do not agree with you for speaking to my wife. We shall step outside for a duel. On the stock note, I got long Bull and Zeta. Oh yeah. So this is a great, like, I like that. So this is what I was talking about. So, you know, I mentioned like these QSs and these Jobies, but I mentioned it when I was on with Mike Camo and Sammy and JR yesterday. The better trade isn't the short. I mean, look, if we can make money from these extension shorts, money is money. But the better trade is to have bought the breakout in Joby through 11. The better trade is to have bought the breakout in QS above 7 and then capture this move. I'm more interested, like I want people to communicate these charts if anybody can find them that are this extended on this many days. I want to see those. But what I really want is people to communicate these bulls. Like this bull, I don't know if it'll be the next one to go, but certainly looks like it could be. It was an insane stock, somewhat recently on its IPO. It's now created a big base here. It has the capacity to be crazy. We know that. And if it can start to break out of this base on volume, it's not impossible for next thing you know, like in the beginning of next week, it's at $24. Like, let's make sure we're finding these two. So appreciate the communication on that bull. I like it. I also like a good old-fashioned. Oh, you're an old-fashioned fella. All right. Well, I like a good old-fashioned, and I like a good old-fashioned fella. It's got to be a one-on-one. How often taking breakouts versus extension moves? It depends on the market environment, honestly. I'd like to say that I am more often than not taking breakouts than extension trades, though recently it seems like I've been taking extension trades more than breakouts. From Scott, personal question: do the markets ever exhaust you or drain you after all these years? If so, how do you manage this or step back? What keeps you engaged or motivated? Yeah, for sure it does. For sure, I have days where I feel exhausted and drained. I'll be honest, I didn't want to do the afternoon meeting today. I just really just wasn't vibing on doing an afternoon meeting today. Pretty tired. Had a really big workout last night. I don't know, a little bit grumpy today. My P&L was all over the place. It finished, like flat-ish, and I just wasn't vibing on it. I just wanted to get out of here. But the biggest thing, I feel like I get that question a lot, and maybe my answer is old-fashioned. Biggest thing is you just got to toughen up, is what I think it is. It's life isn't always sunshine and rainbows and perfectly easy. Sometimes things are tough, and you just got to be tough and push through. And sometimes I don't want to do an afternoon meeting. And how often has anybody ever seen me cancel an afternoon meeting because I didn't feel like doing it that day? I don't think that has ever happened. I've been doing these since 2013. I don't think I have ever canceled an afternoon meeting because I had a bad day and didn't feel like it. Or I was in a bad mood, or I was tired, or I was hungover, or anything else. I just got to be like Nike and just do it. So.
You won't drink with me today.
What?
You won't drink with me today.
No, I'm not really drinking right now.
Oh.
I mean, like a little bit here and there. If there's an occasion, I'll drink. But
I love that for you.
I'm kind of in training mode. I'm like getting, I weighed myself yesterday. I was the lightest I've weighed since I was fighting professionally. Right now,
Yeah,
I ran 8. Oh, thanks. Ran 8.5 miles after work yesterday after the afternoon meeting.
8.5 miles. God, that
I
sounds
lifted
so
on
good.
Monday. On Sunday, I ran 5.5 miles, and then I swam a quarter mile. On Saturday, I biked like 35 miles. I haven't even really been taking rest days. So I don't know, but it's draining.
Drinking's way more fun.
Yeah, for sure, Scott. Appreciate you saying that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so I mean, look, and I guess to further answer on what you're saying, like, I stay motivated because I'm an optimistic person, I think, and I do think that that's important. I tend to be an optimistic person, but also I genuinely enjoy what I do 85% of the time, which is probably significantly more than the average person that's out there, right? I don't mind waking up and starting early and doing my research. I like trading. I like the puzzle of it. I genuinely love this game. And that, helps keep me coming back through the good times and the tougher times. And I've certainly had my share of tougher times over the course of my career. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've had times of, you know, slumps and bigger losses. As a matter of, I mean, I'm kind of in one of those periods now because I got fairly smoked on the short side in June, and then had to size down on those positions at a loss, and you know, just kind of focusing on rebuilding after June was actually the worst month I've had in a long time. So just is what it is. But you know, it's part of the business, right? Like, you can't make money if you don't risk money. And while I'm right pretty darn often, there are no 100% in this business either. So, you know, it's just about just kind of pushing on and focusing on the process, and constantly working towards perfection, which you'll never reach. But you know, it's what I love about the business. So I hope that helps. The stress of enjoying your job versus the stress of hating it is definitely a different mentality. Yeah, for sure, and it keeps me going. I genuinely, it wouldn't be possible for me to work as hard as I do at this if I didn't enjoy it. You know, like getting up as early as I do when I was back in Idaho and the market was crazy in March and April and May, and I was starting my day at 2:30 in the morning local every day, you know, and then sometimes going till 6 p.m. local, like nonstop. Those are long days. You better like it. From David L. Been listening to an audio book that mentioned the importance of knowing when to trade defensively and offensively, and being self-aware or having the skills to do both according to market conditions. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah, I mean, so I feel like I talk pretty often on. I typically, maybe I word it a little bit differently, but I think knowing, I just, you're saying defensively and offensively. I usually describe it as trading more passively or trading more aggressively, but I think that those terms are kind of interchangeable. It's really important to know when the stars are kind of aligning for your trading approach, and be really aggressive and offensive when that happens, and then recognizing when it's not really there and taking a step back and being a little bit lighter on what you do, and waiting for things to kind of rebuild and come in your favor. You know, I learned a long time ago, though it didn't make sense to me until I became a little bit more of an experienced trader, that most of the best traders that are out there make most of their money in shorter periods of time throughout the entire calendar year. Like, if you take like a $1 million trader, he probably is making 85% of his money in 2 to 3 months of the year. It would be is my guesstimate, and then that other, you know, 9-10 months of the year is grinding out the other 10 to 15% of that year's P&L. And that's just because that trader knows when he's experienced enough to know that the stars have aligned, and that this is the opportunity to be aggressive and to be offensive, and to go for it. And when it's not there, you have to be able to take a step back. So yeah, 100% agree with that thought process, and a lot of it has to do with the market conditions and where we're at. Yeah. All right, folks. Anything else for today? Loving the participation in the YouTube today. That's good stuff. All right, I'll wrap it up. Have a great night, everybody. See you all tomorrow. Do you know Ross Cameron? Is that who's that again? He's like a YouTube trader guy, Ross Cameron. Is that the guy that got in trouble with the trade commission or whatever for some of the stuff he was saying? Yeah, that's who it is. The Warrior trading guy. Yeah, he got in trouble some years back, around COVID 2021-ish. Yeah, I know who he is. I've never really followed any of his stuff. So I don't have any comment. But I'll wrap it up then. I'll wrap it up there. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.